Greetings to you. Good morning, afternoon, and good night. We are here today to talk with Craig Oldham about the creation of his book. And so I'm very excited to have Craig here with me. Thank you, Craig, for being here with me today.
Deborah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. If you are watching a recording of this and you see it later on a social media platform, please feel free to type replay or put your questions in the comments below. Craig and I will do our best to come back and answer any questions that you all leave. And it's always nice to see who is there to watch the video. So to you guys who are watching, if you've thought about writing a book at some point, but you're not sure how to start it, or maybe you started one and you're not sure how to finish, I'm excited that you're here because Craig and I are going to talk about the process of creating his book. And we're also going to talk about his business in digital transformation. So he will be sharing what we did to complete his book, and then we'll also be talking about different topics as well. So Craig Oldham is known for cross-industry digital transformation, and he's the author of Shifting Your Demand Curve, a CEO's Guide to Sustainable Growth. And some of the companies he's worked for in the past to help them accelerate their revenue include Zurich, Allstate, and more. Now he advises CEOs on driving incremental value through their marketing. So tell us a little bit about what was a problem that you saw out there that you really wanted to solve with your book and also with your business?
Yeah, so it's when I first started doing consulting about 5 years ago, I really had no clue. And so how to do it or how to go about it. And what I found just through having conversations with potential clients and friends and, folks that I knew is really the mid-market CEO market, which I would classify as somewhere between, from startup to around $100 million, is there's really a lack of kind of marketing experience and how to use marketing to grow your business. And so that's really what as I started to build this process out, it really started as a series of podcasts and blogs and, honestly, just working on my pitch and how to kind of sell myself as a consultant. And that's kind of how that idea came about. And as I honestly just kind of, as kind of helping me frame this, it was really a matter of, okay, how do I put these pieces together and make them cohesive? And really stringing them together, it ended up being, being a book idea.
Yeah, one thing I thought was really cool about your book idea was that you had a process you followed. And so the book could align with that process that you use in order to help people understand more about what you do. So that's an idea for people who are watching. If you have something like that, it's one way you might think about being able to structure your book. So what were the business goals that you were kind of looking to fulfill by having a book? Like for some people, it's visibility or they want speaking engagement. So what were some of those for you?
Honestly, for me, it was, I wanted something that was a quick, easy read that I could give to clients or potential clients or folks that were interested in really understanding the process that I had around helping companies grow, and really honestly a process that I had learned through, people that I had worked with over the course of my career.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Something I thought was really interesting about your book structure in particular is that you have worked with people who have a lot of deep knowledge, and then you were able to incorporate their thinking on your topic as well. And so that's something that a lot of people ask me about. They'll say, can I use an idea from someone else, or can I quote them in this way? And so for anyone who's watching and wonders that, I just wanted to let them know that your book is an especially excellent example of being able to incorporate ideas while combining them with your ideas to make something new, which I think is a really, makes the book more valuable for readers when they need to know what it is that you do and, how they can get this kind of help. So
yeah, absolutely. And I was just really lucky to be able to have folks that I worked with in the past. And to your point, the blog that we started was kind of conversations with entrepreneurs, and that kind of flushed itself out. And to your point, it's always, anytime you can get somebody smarter than yourself to actually talk about what they do, that's always helpful.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, being able to sort of join the conversation, bring the conversation forward. It's all part of how a book can really help not only one person's business, but kind of the industry as a whole. So your book provides examples of how founders and CEOs can accelerate their business success. So can you describe some of the challenges that your customers face in being able to do that?
Yeah, so there's really four challenges that most of them are facing at some point. The first one is, and it kind of goes sequentially in this order. The first one's really around strategy. So how do you take a business plan or a good idea or a good product, turn that into a business strategy, and then ultimately turn it into a go-to-market strategy, and then your marketing execution plan. And so that's kind of the first step. And that includes everything from that strategy piece to actually working with clients and helping them go and get funding for that idea. The second part is, okay, now that you've got that piece going, how quickly can you go? We call this part sustainable velocity. And it's really about how do you develop the right processes? How do you develop the right measurements? And how do you test and learn the business plan that you have in place? The third part is around technology, and it's really, I view technology as an enabler, not a strategy within itself. And a lot of companies that I talk to, they say, well, I've got this technology. How do I implement it? It really should be the other way around. Really should be, here's my strategy. Here's what I want to do. Now, what technologies fit into what I want to do? And then the last piece is really how do you resource for this? And this is really around organizational agility. Who do I hire first? When do I outsource? When do I insource? What's my first hire, and how do I do that? So if I look at those four areas, really they manifest themselves in is marketing doing the right things? Are they going fast enough? Are we using the right technology, or is technology getting in the way? And do I have the right people? And it really comes down to those four questions, and that's really what the book's based on, is answering those four questions.
I like that one based on my work experience in the corporate world. The one about technology speaks to me because sometimes the strategy was devised from what the software could do rather than saying, here's what we need to do. How do we find the software that will help us achieve what we're trying to do? And it seems to me, you can let me know if you don't agree, but it seems to me if people are allowing software to drive their strategy, it's just going to be kind of wobbly and not as strong as it could be.
This is such a great point, Deborah. And I learned this part as I had the opportunity when where I worked to go out and have a conversation with Apple about their technology strategies, and had an opportunity to sit down with Bud Tribble, who, if anybody knows Apple lore, is, Steve Jobs brought him over, and he's definitely part of the core resurrection of Apple. And the question got asked is, you guys need CRM and customer technologies just like any other company, and you're a software company and you build software. How do you do it? And he said, we mold our processes around the technology, not the other way around. And honestly, that just kind of stuck with me. And I think that's where, it's a big lesson that a lot of companies could learn is don't try to customize software, especially if you're not a software company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. And I think what I really like about your process of working with companies is that there's a reflective process throughout where they're asking these questions and figuring out what the right answers are for them so that they're doing the right things for their company, not just the right things that's, for any company. So one of the things I want to ask you about regarding creating the book is that a lot of times people wonder, does the world need another book on my topic? A lot of people ask me that when they're trying to figure out, should I even write a book in the first place? So can you tell me a little bit more, like your thinking on that and adding to the existing conversation out there?
Right. I mean, there's two things. Number one, I never thought that I would put author next to my name. Not that in our having these conversations. The second part is the name of the next book you're going to help me with is The Reluctant Entrepreneur, as we talked about. So yeah. It is. It's definitely one of those things where you try to get through and you think about, how do you build the book and how do you build it out? But honestly, it was really just one of those things where, it just, you string all of these things together and it just happened organically for me. It wasn't anything that I was kind of pulling it together. And, in conversations with folks like yourself and other folks, and Tom Cole, who was also a big contributor to this, and as we started to pull themes together, it just kind of organically happened. But, for me, that was the biggest piece. It was never like, hey, I'm going to start this and then I'm going to have this big book. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's more of a process that evolves out of what it is that you're doing in a way. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it was just kind of doing content marketing for myself and really trying to gather my thoughts together and organize them.
Yeah. So picking up on what you said about content marketing, a lot of people will approach me and they'll say they're worried about what their colleagues will think about their work. And to me, a book is content. So it's part of, it's part of content that we create. So what would your advice? I had this concern too when I first went into the entrepreneurial world. I just thought, well, what are people going to think? So I'm just curious, what would your advice be to someone who says that to you?
Yeah, it's it's very valid. And it's one of the things that, honestly, I had anxiety up until the point where it was out for a few weeks, where it was like, oh my gosh, I have to write things down. I'm a digital marketer, so I can always go through and erase things. I feel like in the world. No, that's not true, but at least you have the illusion that you could do it. So for me to write something down and then put it out and then have to go back and say, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? I've never had that experience before in my career, and that was the one time. But you just have to let it go and be free about it. And honestly, the positive reaction that I got from colleagues, peers, and folks that I talked to, even if they didn't read it, they still were very complimentary about just the process of going through and putting your thoughts down in an organized way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because we transform as authors and writers, which kind of connects into my next point about transformation in general. We're also looking for a transformation in the book, which a process brings a transformation, or, if it's a novel or a movie, the main character is always transforming. Business books are similar in that there's some kind of transformation in the reader's understanding of the material. And then also the book itself is usually talking about different kinds of transformation, how people changed by using the information in there. So can you tell people about a transformation that you've helped a client get in the digital transformation work that you do?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of clients that I work with are either in the first round of funding, or they are getting their second round of funding, or they're trying to break through a barrier, right? Where it is they're trying to go from $30 million to $50 million to maybe $100 million in revenue. And marketing is one of those tools for them to be able to use it. I would tell you the biggest thing, and I'm just going to use a generic example because a lot of the CEOs that I work with are transitioning themselves from being a founder to a CEO, which is very different, right? So where you actually are that founder and you have this great idea, you hire a couple of salespeople and you grow your business to something that's significant, right? $10-20 million. That's nothing to, that's quite an accomplishment. But now you want to kind of transform that and build that. Now you've got to become that CEO. And that's really where I think a lot of where, you can hire folks like me, fractional CMOs, whatever you want to call us. And it really helps because we've seen the other side and we've worked with CEOs before and really helping them get to that other side. So what I tell them all the time is a lot of this is you kind of have to let yourself go. You have to trust the people that work for you, and you hire these really great people. Don't stifle them, right? You've got to make sure you help them spread their wings. And I would tell you that's a common theme across a lot of the businesses that I work with in helping them make that transformation.
Huh. Yeah, I could see that helping them. Yeah. And I bet like they're thinking differently, they're taking different actions. So there's just a lot of richness there in what you can help them achieve. So thank you for describing that. Is there anything that you want to add to that? And maybe you've already covered it, so maybe you don't have something you want to add to it, but is there anything you want to add about how your work transforms their thinking overall? Like, do you find at the end of your work, do you ever have like an aha moment where you're like, oh, wow, they're really thinking about this differently. And you're feeling like, that's a good thing. Does it work that way?
It does sometimes, especially as we get a breakthrough. So when, marketing and sales certainly go together hand in hand. Once we are able to transform an organization from being just a sales centric organization to actually incorporating marketing, and marketing is a muscle that you have to build within the organization. For them, it is, and I've had this moment a couple of times in the last 5 years that I've done this, where we actually build the muscle and they're starting to generate leads. And now what's happening is they're less reliant on the magical salesperson who has a great contact list and has connections with the company. And now they're organically able to generate leads, talk more about their value proposition, and even expand and go into different businesses. So I've certainly seen that metamorphosis in a couple of clients that has just been, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because now I actually can see a path to getting to the goals that I want personally.
Oh, wow. It's really cool. I feel it's funny because this is also, I feel like this is a metaphor or something related to a book as well. So transformation is sort of the gist of what we're talking about, obviously. But I'm also curious, like, as far as the book goes, what did I know it's early days for your book, so it might be too early to say, but like, how has the book changed maybe people's perceptions of you, or, something for you? I'm just curious.
It's honestly, I think that even the folks that I work with that also help me in the business, it's interesting because it's more so than I thought, and it's even honestly a little awkward to say it this way, but it's almost been now a centerpiece for the consulting agency firm that I have now, where we're able to kind of use that as a grounding and as a process that we have and that we all can kind of use as a team. So that's definitely been very transformational for us, much more than I thought it was going to be. Listen, I thought it was probably going to be like a lead generation piece, but the more people saw it, it's kind of, it definitely does position you more as a thought leader. Not that your thoughts are any better than anybody else's, but just the ability to kind of organize them, put them into thoughts, working with someone like you to help, pull it all together in an organized way. That's really helpful.
Cool. Nice. We may have already talked about this, but you may have already covered this, but is there anything you want to add about how you describe the value of your work when you're talking to founders and CEOs so they really understand it? Or do you feel like we've already covered that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in the 4 processes, and what we, what I typically try to do for most of them is like I said, go through the 4 questions, talk about their strategy, their process, technology, and people, and how you configure each one of those pieces, and to make sure that you're accelerating. As we tend to get into a lot of engagements, we find that one of those areas is typically one that we tend to focus in on more than the others to help drive growth. And what you'll find is that there's often a barrier there to that growth. Not just, like we said, the way that the CEO creates the culture, but also the processes and mechanisms, and honestly, the folks that they have working for them and trying to elevate their resources and skills.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's good to know about. Thank you for sharing that. So we're kind of going between what you do and between the book creation process. So I was curious, could you elaborate on the book collaboration that we did together that was based on your 4 questions, and just what you found beneficial about it, how it helped you think about your work, and anything else that you care to share?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I'll use this metaphor, Deborah, as like it's almost like I threw a bunch of blogs your way and said, can we organize this in some way that makes sense? And that was really my biggest reluctance in the entire process was, okay, how do I take this disparate blogs that are out there that have a common theme and create a book. And, I'm certainly not a copywriter. Anybody that knows me knows I don't write copy. But having you help me kind of frame it, number one. And number two, I thought the other thing that was really awesome is, and you pulled this out of me, was stories behind each one of the pieces, which I think makes honestly an interesting storytelling opportunity. And that was probably the hardest thing for me, was to pull out stories and to kind of bring these things to life. And you really helped me get through that and write those stories. It took me a very long time to kind of get through this and get through this process, but it was honestly, it was scary, but then it was very enjoyable towards the end, honestly, to try to get there. And as you start to see it come together, but it does stretch you, right? And I do appreciate you in this entire process, just being able to stretch me and pull me and make sure it was interesting read, right? Even though
Yeah.
you kind of have an idea of what we do, it's like it still has to be interesting at the same time.
Yeah, and one of the things I like is how your book opens, how we decided to start out your book with the introduction, with a story that's compelling. Even going back and reading that, I just think, wow, I love the opening of your book. So everyone should go take a look at it.
Yeah,
um,
and you can stop there.
yeah.
Just hit the.
So what was it that led you to work with me in particular?
Well, we had known each other in the past, and kind of knowing you and kind of knowing the way that you work in your process. Number one, I felt comfortable with you, even though we reconnected, after a while and just talking you through the process. For me, it was having somebody, number one, that understood business. I mean, that was really important to me as I talked to folks about doing the book. It was, I wanted somebody that kind of got it, right? And that also kind of was approachable and, didn't, I guess, help me with my anxiety around it as well. So, that was really helpful. That's what steered me. And I loved your idea and process around how we created it, which was very kind of organic, but yet very structured.
Yeah, those kinds of a lot of people have some point in the book writing process. I usually tell people this up front because it's just good to know. But there's usually some point in the process where we begin to think, "Oh my gosh, what have we done? What have I done? I'm writing this book. What?"
Yeah.
And so it's nice to have someone who can kind of walk you through that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, is there anything else that you think prospective authors should know about becoming an author?
Just start. I mean, it starts, just write your thoughts down. And whether it's journaling or doing a blog or, putting your thoughts together, just have a structure and fill the pieces in it. And, I try to put myself on a time bound, but I mean, honestly, this probably took maybe from start to finish, it might have been a full year for us to get this whole thing done. A lot of that's on me, of course, but yeah, you just have to start.
Yeah, just start. I love that.
Yeah.
And you raise a good point because a lot of people ask me how long it takes. And so sometimes I'll just say, anywhere from 2 months to a year, because really it depends on someone's schedule. It depends on if someone gets busy with a client project and can't work on it for a month, do we count that time? Do we not? So when people ask, it's really dependent upon those kinds of factors. And someone can make it take as long as or as short or almost as short as they may want, not like a day or 2 weeks, but a reasonable time frame.
Well, you gave me that same answer, and I thought, well, I'll knock it out in 3 months, certainly. But
yeah,
it didn't happen.
Yeah, that also happens to all of us who work on books. We're like, wait, it'll just take this long. Yeah, because usually there's some more in there that we have to figure out. So if someone wanted to improve their results in digital transformation, I know you have the 4 questions, which really makes this process so clear for people who are wondering, for founders and CEOs who are wondering about this. Is there anything that you think people might not realize would be a sign that they need someone with your skill set to help them with these areas?
The biggest thing is are you finding that there's a barrier to growth, right? So have you, as we talked about earlier, have you hit one of these barriers where you can't go from 10 to $20 million? You can't go from 30 to 50 to 50 to 100, and you're just kind of stuck. And that's really when you want to bring the expertise in to be able to kind of push you over the edge. Take a look at the 4 areas, understand how we move those, and understand what it's actually going to take to kind of get you through there. The next part is, you've got to be patient, and we're building a muscle here. And I call marketing Digital marketing and lead generation, which is kind of what my specialty is it's a lot like cold calling, right? You're not just going to make one cold call and all of a sudden sales are going to roll in, right? You've definitely got to build that practice and learn your value proposition, your messaging strategy, and all those pieces. And where do you place your ads, and how do you respond, and then how do you work with your salespeople? So it is that muscle that you're kind of building out, and you've got to be patient to be able to build it. We get people started on a 90-day plan that kind of gets them there. Sometimes we continue on, sometimes we go in as more of an advisory role, but honestly, those are the biggest barriers to getting yourself there.
Yeah, the patience is really interesting, because I was thinking about the sales process earlier today in the realm of a sales book that I had worked on in the past, and thinking about how long a company would expect a sales rep to begin to get results. So I was thinking, well, one way I guess they shorten that is they'll hire a sales rep who already has established connections in the industry. But if it's a newer sales rep, then of course it's going to take longer to be able to build those kinds of relationships. And I guess I was also thinking about it in relation to relationships and how long it can take before a company needs XYZ. So it's going to be a while before they can even order it, because, whatever they're currently using, they might not need to replace it right away. So these kinds of things can have long lead times. Do you feel like CEOs and founders have a good sense of those lead times and somewhat reasonable expectations, or do you feel like it's something that people need to examine more closely in their businesses?
For sure, yeah. For me, for most of the clients that I work with, they certainly have a good understanding of the life cycle that it takes from initial contact to close. And most of them have that good sense of what that all looks like. The biggest thing that you have to do is when you're trying to move the needle and you're trying to really fundamentally change your revenue generation engine, is you've got to figure out where the margin is going to come from. Because to your point, if you're building a sales team and your margin is coming from paying commission, right? You've got to somehow figure out how to take the margin that you're paying in commission and shift it to marketing. That's often the hardest part about how you do your planning there, because you've got some very high end salespeople that are probably making pretty good commissions, and you're paying them and they're delivering, right? So it's not to say that they're not delivering, but you've somehow got to figure out how to flip that paradigm a little bit. Either you make another investment in marketing, or you have to figure out how to change that paradigm.
That's great. Thank you so much. So a few of the things that I've heard you say are have patience and just start. I feel like that can apply to writing the book or to digital transformation, right?
It's life in general, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So as we've had this conversation, weaving the two topics together, I began to see all these similarities that I never saw in quite the same way before. So I hope people who watch this are also seeing how there's some overlap here, because I thought that was pretty interesting, that evolved that way. And so where can people learn more about you and follow you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, of course. So we're on LinkedIn, but you can also go to the website. It's www.madlow.net. It's my last name backwards.net. And we've got information there if you want to sit down and have a conversation. I mean, it's always like yourself, it's always just fun to meet new people and talk about their challenges, and that's where you can find us. And we're a firm. We have about 10 fractional CMOs, 10 fractional CMOs, CROs, and CFO. So we have quite the community.
Wow, that's fantastic. You can just provide a lot of different services that way that help people with all of this. Fantastic.
Yeah. Everybody's got a little bit of a different skill set and where they come from. And, my background is financial services, telecom, nonprofit, and we have other CMOs that have just, more SaaS experience and different types of things. And then obviously the CRO side is a big part too. And a lot of times we'll come in and work together on projects. So you kind of know it's almost like you have a turnkey executive team when you need one.
That's wonderful. Thanks for explaining that, because I'm sure that'll be really useful for people to know that you have such a deep bench, as people say in athletics. So
yeah,
thanks again for being here. And it was so great talking to you.
Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate it.